man sits at his kitchen table with a laptop open, looking at a spreadsheet. 6 units, every one of them occupied. The rent came in on time. He pays the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, the water bill, and there's money left at the bottom of the column. Real money. He looks at that number for a second longer than he needs to because it means something. It worked. He owns an apartment building, and the building is paying him. Now jump forward 2 years. Same kitchen table, same spreadsheet. 2 of those 6 units have been empty for 3 months. There's a stain spreading across the ceiling of the 3rd floor that turned into an $18,000 quote. And the number at the bottom of the column is red. Not by a little. Here's what I need you to notice. Nothing unusual happened. There was no crash, no disaster, no run of bad luck. Every single thing that hit him was on a schedule, and most of it was written down somewhere he could have read the day he bought the place. You've seen the videos on this: cap rate, net operating income, cash-on-cash return, the 1% rule. Every one of them teaches you how to calculate what a building earns. And they're not wrong. Those numbers matter. But almost nobody teaches you the one number that actually decides whether you survive owning it. Not how much it makes, how much slack it has. You can run every return metric ever invented and still walk straight past the figure that quietly ruins people. Because a small building almost never fails from earning too little. It fails from having no room when something completely predictable goes wrong. So the real question was never, how much does this thing return? The real question is, how much can go wrong before this turns on me? And there's a second layer underneath that, which is the part that genuinely surprised me. Because a building isn't a thing that sits there producing income. A building is a thing that is quietly taking itself apart every single day on a timetable that was set the day it was built. The roof is dying. The furnace is dying. The water heater is dying. All of it on a clock. And the rent you collect is, in part, an advance on the bill that hasn't arrived yet. So we're doing 3 things today. First, I'm going to build you a number almost nobody in this business uses. One that tells you, in plain terms, how many empty months your building can survive before it starts eating you. Second, we're opening the bill that never shows up on a monthly statement, the one that arrives once a decade in 5 figures, and I'll show you why it usually arrives with friends. And third, we're going back to that man in the first scene, at that good month, with the full units and the money left over. And I'm going to show you exactly where that money actually came from. Real numbers, one building, and the math that nobody puts on the listing sheet.
Here's the thing that should reframe this whole conversation. The bank already measures your fragility. It has a name for it. It puts it in your loan documents. And almost no owner ever looks at what it actually means. It's called the debt service coverage ratio. Take the building's net operating income, divide it by the annual debt service. If that number is 1.0, the building covers its mortgage and not $1 more. Anything below 1.0, and the building is bleeding. It can't pay for itself, and the difference comes out of your pocket. So lenders demand the cushion. Most want at least 1.2, sometimes 1.25, before they'll write the loan at all. And here's where I want you to stop and actually hear that number. Because everyone treats it as a hurdle to clear, instead of what it really is. 1.2 does not mean comfortable. 1.2 means 20% of slack. That's the entire margin between a building that works and a building that turns on you. So let's translate that out of banker language and into something you can actually feel. 20% of slack on a 6-unit building is roughly 1 unit. Not 1 unit vacant forever. The math works in unit months. So I want to give you a number, and I'd like you to use it on every building you ever look at. Call it the empty months number. Across 12 months, how many unit months of vacancy can this building absorb before the cash flow goes negative? It's a rule of thumb, not laboratory science, but it tells you the one thing every other metric hides. Let's run it. A $500,000 building, 4 units, $1,200 a month each. That's $57,600 in gross annual rent. Take out realistic vacancy, take out operating expenses, taxes, insurance, management, maintenance, and what's left covers the debt with a ratio right around 1.22. Perfectly financeable. A lender signs that all day. Empty months number? About 3. 3 unit months of vacancy across a year, and you are at 0. Now hold that next to reality. Average vacancy for small multifamily runs between 7 and 9%. Call it 1 empty month per unit per year. So on a 4-unit building, a completely normal, unremarkable year already produces about 4 unit months of vacancy. On a 6-unit building, 6. The average year already eats the entire margin the lender required. The bad year isn't the thing that gets people. The average one is. And a vacancy isn't just an empty month, which is the part that catches new owners. Every tenant who leaves triggers a turn. Clean it, paint it, fix what they broke, relist it. A clean turn runs $2,000 to $4,000, plus 3 to 6 weeks of vacancy on top. A tenant moving out doesn't leave you an empty unit. It leaves you an invoice. So that's your margin, and it's far thinner than anyone selling you a building will say out loud. But every number I just used has the same blind spot. They're all monthly. And the thing that actually kills small buildings doesn't show up in any month at all. It shows up once a decade, in 5 figures, on a schedule you could have read the day you signed. Every building has a death schedule, and the strange part is that it isn't hidden. It's public. Anyone can look it up. A roof lasts 20 to 25 years. An HVAC system runs 12 to 15, less in a hot southern climate. A water heater gives you 8 to 12. Appliances, 8 to 15. Read that list again because none of it is a risk. A risk is something that might happen. This is a calendar. Every one of those systems is already counting down, in your building, right now, whether it's occupied or empty, whether you're a good landlord or a terrible one. And here's what they cost when the countdown ends. A roof replacement runs $15,000 to $20,000. An HVAC system, $8,000 to $12,000. A water heater, $1,500 to $2,000. These are not repairs. Repairs are what you do when something breaks early. These are replacements. They were always coming. They arrive on schedule, and they never once appear on a monthly statement. They show up once every 10 or 15 years as a five-figure surprise to an owner who spent a decade being told the building was profitable. Now here's the part that almost nobody sees coming, and it's the reason small buildings collapse the way they do. A building was constructed all at once, or renovated all at once, which means the roof, the furnace, the water heater, and the appliances were all installed in the same year. And systems that were installed in the same year die in the same year. You are not facing one five-figure bill per decade. You are facing several of them in the same winter. That's why professional operators build a component-level capital forecast, a spreadsheet with every major system, its install date, and its expected life. They're not being fussy. They're hunting for the year everything dies at once, because that year exists in every single building, and the only question is whether you know where it is. So, what should you be setting aside? The standard for Class A and B multifamily is $250 to $450 per unit per year. For older Class C buildings, $600 to $800. Or, as a rule of thumb, 5% of your rent every month into a reserve you do not touch. On a 6-unit building, that is real money leaving the profit line every single month for a bill that won't arrive for another decade. And when you add all of it up, vacancy, routine maintenance, capital reserves, management, insurance, taxes, bookkeeping, and your own time, roughly half of the gross rent is gone before the mortgage is even paid. That's the 50% rule, and it's a filter, not a fantasy. If the building doesn't work under that assumption, it isn't a deal. It's a hope. So now I want you holding one question for the next few minutes. Go back to that man in the first scene. 6 full units, every rent paid, money left at the bottom of the column, and he's smiling at it. If the capital reserve he should have been setting aside every month was coming out of that exact same rent, and he never set it aside, then where, precisely, did the money he was celebrating come from? Planned vacancy is one thing. A tenant who stops paying and won't leave is something else entirely. And it's the fastest way to blow through your empty months number in a single quarter. An eviction costs somewhere between $3,500 and $10,000 all in. Legal fees run $500 to over $5,000. Court costs $50 to $500. You lose 2 to 3 months of rent while the process grinds forward. Call it $2,500. And at the end of it, when they finally go, you still owe yourself the turnover, another $1,700 to $4,000 to make the unit rentable again. And here's the detail that tells you how badly most owners think about this. A thorough tenant screening costs $35 to $50. Managers routinely call that expensive, then treat a $5,000 eviction as an unavoidable cost of doing business. That's the cost-benefit analysis backwards. The cheapest capital you will ever deploy in this business is the money you spend deciding who gets the keys. Now let's talk about the mistake I see people make before they even own the building, because it's the one that quietly sets the whole trap. Everybody chases cap rate. Apartments overall have been trading around 5.7%. Class A in a primary market runs 4.5 to 5.5. Class B in a secondary market, 5.5 to 7. and Class C, in smaller tertiary markets, 7 to 9% or more. So, a first-time buyer looks at that spread, and the logic seems obvious. Why would anyone take 5 when they could take 9? Because the cap rate isn't a reward. It's a price tag on risk, and it's remarkably accurate. The 9% building is older, which means its systems are closer to the end of that death schedule we just walked through. It's in a weaker market, which means higher vacancy and longer time to release. It houses more financially fragile tenants, which means more turnover and more evictions. Every one of those factors compresses the same number. You are not buying a higher return. You are buying a smaller empty months number. The market is telling you exactly how fragile the building is, and most buyers hear it as a discount. And these factors do not arrive politely, one at a time. They compound and they cluster. The old building whose roof is due is also the building in the soft market where units sit empty for 2 months instead of 3 weeks, which is also the building where a tenant stops paying and the eviction takes a quarter. It's the same year. It's always the same year. So let me be genuinely fair, because plenty of people own small buildings for 30 years and do very well. 3 things separate them. First, they fund the capital reserve like it's a mortgage payment, a fixed line, not whatever's left over. And they hold 3 to 6 months of operating expenses in liquid cash, so a bad quarter is an inconvenience instead of a crisis. Second, they buy slack instead of yield. Given a choice between a 6% building with a new roof and new mechanicals and a 9% building with a 20-year-old roof, they take the 6 every time, because they're pricing the years the seller isn't mentioning. Third, they treat screening as the highest return spending in the entire operation, because the alternative costs 100 times more. Do those 3 things, and a small building can genuinely work for decades. Skip the first one, and something very particular happens, and it is exactly what happened to the man in that first scene.
So let's answer the question. Where did the money he was celebrating actually come from? It came from the reserve he never funded. That's it. That's the whole thing. The capital reserve, the $250 to $450 per unit, the 5% of rent that should have been leaving his account every single month and going into an account he doesn't touch, never left. So it showed up at the bottom of his spreadsheet instead, in the profit line, looking exactly like profit. It was never profit. It was the roof, paid to him early. Think about what that means, because it reframes the entire 2 years. The building was disassembling itself the whole time, on schedule, exactly as we described. Every month that passed used up a little more roof, a little more furnace, a little more water heater. The bill was accruing the entire time, quietly, invisibly, precisely on the calendar it was always going to follow. He just wasn't paying it. He was spending it. He wasn't running a profitable building. He was eating one month at a time, and writing the bites down as income. Now go back to that first spreadsheet, the good month. 6 units full, every rent paid on time, money left at the bottom of the column, and a man smiling at a number. The disaster was already in that spreadsheet, not as a line you could point to, as a line that wasn't there. The thing that destroyed him 2 years later wasn't the empty units, and it wasn't the roof. It was the missing row. And here's the uncomfortable part. That spreadsheet looked exactly like a spreadsheet for a healthy building. That's the trap.
A building with no reserve and a building with a reserve look identical for years. They only diverge on one day, and by then, it's already decided. The good month and the red month were never two separate events. They were the same event, 2 years apart. And when it finally landed, it landed the way it always does, together. 2 units went empty at once, blowing past an empty month's number he'd never calculated. The roof came due, $18,000, in the same year the HVAC was already at the end of its life, because they were installed in the same year. And each of those empty units still owed him a turn, $2,000 to $4,000 each, before anyone could move in. Not one piece of that was bad luck. Every single item was on a schedule that existed on the day he signed the closing documents. The only thing that was actually unpredictable was the order they arrived in. Which brings us to the thing I want you to take from this video more than anything else. A building doesn't fail on the day the roof leaks. It fails on every month you spent the roof and called it profit. The leak is just the day the accounting finally catches up with you.
So here's what you do with all of this. 4 rules, and they work whether you already own a building or you're looking at one this weekend. Rule 1. Calculate your empty months number before you buy, not after. Across 12 months, how many unit months of vacancy can this building absorb before the cash flow goes negative? Then compare it against reality, 7 to 9% average vacancy, roughly 1 empty month per unit per year. If your number is smaller than that, you are not buying a building with thin margins. You are buying a building that does not survive an ordinary year. Rule 2. Fund the reserve like it's a mortgage payment. $250 to $450 per unit per year for a decent building, $600 to $800 for older Class C, or 5% of rent every month. It leaves the account before you call anything profit, because if it doesn't leave, it isn't profit, and you now know exactly what it is instead. Rule 3. Pull the age of every major system on the day you tour the place. Roof, furnace, water heater, appliances. Write down the install date and the expected life, and find the year they converge. That year exists in every building. In an older one, it might be 3 years away. Knowing where it is doesn't cost you anything, and not knowing is how people end up selling at a loss. Rule 4. Buy slack, not yield. A 6% building with new mechanicals is safer than a 9% building with a 20-year-old roof, and it isn't close. That extra 3% isn't a gift from the market. It's the market pricing the exact risk you haven't calculated yet. So who actually gets burned? 4 people. The one who mistakes cash flow for profit. The one who chases the highest cap rate without ever looking at the age of the mechanicals. The one who treats the reserve as optional, as something you fund in a good year. And the most common of all, the owner who has 2 or 3 good years, concludes the building is a good building, and doesn't realize he simply hasn't reached the year yet. And if you're watching from outside the United States, the terminology shifts. The financing, the tax treatment, the tenant law are all different in the UK, in Canada, in Australia. But a roof doesn't know what country it's standing in. That schedule is physics, not finance, and it runs the same everywhere. So here's the thing nobody says when they hand you the keys. You don't collect rent from a building. You collect it from a building that is quietly taking itself apart on a timetable that was written the day it was built.
Every month, a little more of the roof is gone, a little more of the furnace, a little more of everything you can't see and won't think about until it's already failed. Rent was never profit. Rent is the building paying you back for its own death, in installments. And the only question that has ever mattered is whether you saved the money or spent it. So run it on your own building or the one you're thinking about. What's your empty months number? Tell me in the comments, and be honest about the vacancy you'd actually get, not the one on the listing. And subscribe, because next time we take apart another asset that looked profitable right up until the calendar caught up with it.